Welcome back to the Drag the Waters podcast. You got cultural commentary from two Texas bros, your hosts. I am Aaron James, anarchist occultist, sitting here with...
Lurker Mario, what's going on? Central Texas represent.
Hell yeah. And today we're free balling. We got some stuff to talk about, and we're glad to have you here hanging with us. So, I mean, dude, what about that tarot reading we just did, bro?
Oh, man. I don't know what to take from it. I think it's good. I think it's mostly good. I'd say it.
There was a lot of good in there, too, but, man, it seemed brutal to me, bro.
Nah.
No pleasure, no love?
I mean, maybe it's like work hard, play hard. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Maybe it's talking about sacrifice.
I mean, it's just a snapshot of the energy today and whatever was going on through your head. So, new place for the cards. I didn't even banish or nothing, but... Oh, man. Oh, well. And it's the first time I've done a Celtic cross for anybody, so I don't even know why I brought it up. I should have just been like, maybe I should do the split hexagram. That would have been 7 cards, and it might not have been as brutal.
Yeah,
or it could have been way
more
worse.
brutal, yeah.
So...
I thought it was cool. The artwork's really nice, but I'm not really familiar with like how to read any of the cards and stuff, so...
Well, there's 2 ways that I know of. There's the way that I do it. I didn't do the intuitive thing as much because I was a little nervous and a little distracted. That's okay, you know. That's just how it goes. But so there's the intuitive way where people just look at the cards and they go into the altered state and they read. They get a message directly from the cards intuited somehow, or they can look at the layout and they intuited messages based off what their cards are. My sister does that a lot. But I'm also a student of, I guess what you call it, the Kabbalah and the Tree of Life, and a tarot deck is pretty much like a textbook for the Tree of Life and how it operates. Even though I don't understand it always, like all the sword cards are most of them are very brutal, like despair and cruelty, ruin, a lot of other ones that are pretty bad. I've seen those cards pop up in my life recently, so I'm familiar with them.
The symbolism is like really attractive. It like makes me think it's like you see a picture and then you could like just based on what's in the picture and like where it is, like is it above or is it below or stuff. I mean, I don't know. I'm spitballing. I'm just like looking at the art. The art's really cool and it seems like it has a message, and it makes me think of like, what is it? The Secret Teachings of All Ages, where like not necessarily like stories, but messages were put in paintings and stuff, or like in architecture and stuff around the world, so that the people in the know could like get the nod or like understand the message just by showing up. Whereas like everybody else is just kind of like, oh, look this eye on the top of the pyramid and whatever, you know.
Definitely. Another cool thing about art is you can use it as a sigil. Any kind of art, whether it's song, poetry, visual arts, you can encode stuff. Just like you can look at someone's spontaneous art, that's spontaneous with air quotes because you can't see it right now, can like give you an idea of the person's state of mind in the subconscious. You can also encode different messages based off of numbers, symbols, in a piece of art that you want to see happen, which is one way. If you ever read the comic The Invisibles by Grant Morrison, you probably already know this because you're in, but he's a chaos magician, and he made one of the characters look just like him, a bald dude named King Mob, and whatever he wanted to happen to him in his life, he gave it to King Mob, and then it manifest, including one time where he gave him a necrotizing fasciitis, and he ended up manifesting a flesh-eating disease.
Yeah, it's brutal.
And he had to overcome it. He did some magic with some Loa, which are voodoo gods, essentially, or voodoo spirits, the Scorpion clan. And they said, okay, we can heal you, but you're going to have to get a tattoo of a scorpion on your lower back. So he gave the tattoo to King Mob, and everything cleared up once he read it into his comic.
Man.
Yeah, dude.
So he like projected his character onto... or himself through a character, and then started like it was affecting him in real life.
Yeah, he called it a hypersigil. I think there's another exercise by this magician. He's more into the shamanic. He's also in the chaos side of it, called Aiden Wachter. I have his book, Not Weaving Weird. I think that's the book that I'm thinking of, but I don't have it. But it's called A Book of Lies. where you have a journal and you can write from the past, present, or the future, and you just write entries about whatever you want to happen. So you can rewrite your past, you can write what you want in the future, you can write from different points of view, and basically you write this stuff out, and in hopes that it'll start manifesting into your life. So there's cool stuff you can do. I mean, it's, if you want to strip it down to basics, it's like psychological therapy in a way, except when you get the weird material manifestations that seem to happen when you wink at the universe and it winks back.
And is that like what's that word? Is that derived from The Book of Lies by Aleister Crowley, or is that just like completely unrelated altogether?
I think it's just what he called his journal. I mean, he's probably familiar with the Book of Lies, but I don't know how related that is. I mean, I've never read, I can't comment on it because I've never read the Book of Lies. I know you have a copy.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense, or some of it makes sense. To me, it seems like logical fallacies. Like, to me, it seems like sophistry, and maybe that's just because I'm like unfamiliar with his whole game, you know. But like, to me, it's like making sense out of things that don't make sense, and like making it in a convincing way to where like people will be like, "Oh yeah." Like,
well, it's probably just like a philosophical book. Like if you read. Like because I've been at Half Price Books the past couple of days. I actually had a book that I've been wanting from Amazon, Manifest, into Half Price Books today. Got it half off, which is pretty dope. Shamanic Kabbalah. 'Cause that's what I meant. Like the two things I'm into, shamanism and the Kabbalah.
mm-hmm.
Hopefully it's not the book I want to write. That would make me kind of sad.
I know, you just reinterpret it, bro. Or not reinterpret it, but like streamline it.
Well, I mean,
User friendly.
The book's going to be based off of my experience and my exercises. And my interpretations and all that stuff based, and then also the gnosis I gained from the spiritual practices. So in the book is an idea right now. It might change completely by the time I'm through with it, and the angels give me something weird.
And where does shamanism fall? Like, is that outside of paganism or outside of like Western tradition? Is it like a different discipline like voodoo or stuff like that versus like Eastern tradition?
Yeah, I use shamanism.
Or is it just a word?
It's more nature based, because like shaman really comes from a tribe in Mongolia or somewhere in the steppes of Asia. Yeah, that's where the word comes from. They're very specific in their practices, and that's where the word comes from. Like if you go to South America, you're not going to find shamans. You're going to find curanderos, and ayahuasqueros and other
that sounds
medicine.
Like Spanish.
Yeah. And then there's probably some like native words for them too that I don't remember, but it's all, I mean, because shamanic practices and practitioners have existed through all cultures.
Mm-hmm.
Probably from, if you like the stoned ape theory, like people were taking mushrooms when we were dumb. If this is how we evolved in this way, and we get bombarded with these trips, have our neurons in our brains. Hyperactive and growing much faster. The glossolalia, which is just the nonsense speaking in tongues, which might have been the beginning of human languages. And then people take psychedelics now, and they get visited by the elves and whatnot. People have probably been communicating with these entities since the beginning. So sometimes people talk about aliens coming down and messing with the evolution of human genetics, like. This might have been the material manifestation. I mean, this is all in the past, so we can only guesstimate. I don't believe that there might be a hard material past. Ultimately, it doesn't matter because we're living here and now, and that's all that really matters to me. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to be practical about it. But as far as so aside from the history and the tripping of humans, but the shaman is the person, depending on the culture, is probably a little bit different, is the person who lived on the edge of the tribe or whatever, the weirdo. But they were also like basically the counselor, the psychologist, the advisor, and maybe the medicine man or woman, and they'd get all this knowledge, or they'd keep all this knowledge and work with the spirits for the good of the tribe, in different ways, either through use of drugs or through drumming. Basically, it's like any kind of magical practice. You have to go into the altered state of consciousness, which is like some kind of trance, to where you can perceive these non-physical entities and basically download information from the God cloud or whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's weird. And then we like characterize it to speak about it like, oh, I talked to this spirit. I talked to the spirit of bird. And the reason we called it the spirit of bird back then because how else we're going to communicate what this formless entity was. You know what bird is. I know what bird is, or eagle.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to call this spirit the spirit of eagle because it gives me bigger perspective and it feels like I'm flying around when I'm in my drug-induced trance.
Right.
So that's how we communicated.
And we're talking to Osiris or whoever is up there.
It could be anything. Like it's another theory as far as the occult goes. It's like, especially with like the Kabbalah, like just because there's always like a god of the underworld.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like when the Romans contacted that entity through their mystical practices, they talked to Pluto.
Mm-hmm.
When the Greeks did it, they talked to Hades. When the Egyptians did it, they talked to Anubis.
Mm-hmm.
Now, potentially, they could all be talking to
the same entity.
Mm-hmm. Or it's just the entity. That's how the entity meets you in the middle. Is you get this image, and then they animate it. So there's like your cultural puppet for this spirit to talk to you through.
Mm.
So that's one way of thinking about like the use of symbols in magic. It's like if you want to talk to the god of death, you don't have to talk to any god. You can create your own.
Right.
You can use one from a comic book or whatever. Just if you have the intention of connecting to this underworld spirit, then they might come to you in any which way, especially what your cultural familiarity is.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're culturally Egyptian, you might end up talking to Anubis if you studied it and know about it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're a Christian, you might end up talking to the devil or something.
Right, or Baphomet or something like that.
And if you're
Mephistopheles.
Yeah, if you're into like you're Indian and Hindu, you might end up talking to whatever their god of, the underworld is.
And that's what you've like prepared yourself to make it familiar to you once you get there. Somebody, or I'm assuming,
Yeah.
I'm like some of that stuff's really interesting. I wanted to read, what is it, the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Apparently they've like mapped out. They're like progressively mapping out.
Those guys have a crazy magic culture over there in Tibet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they've like supposedly. You've got like 2 hours. I don't know. I'm spitballing off of a conversation I had with somebody.
Yeah, go for it, bro.
But apparently you have like a certain amount of time where you're like leaving the realm that we exist in, and you're like entering the spirit realm, and you can communicate back and forth, and how like they've mapped out like a temple, like when you arrive, like you're in a building, and like how many steps and like where the rooms are and like what paths to go on to like do stuff. So I don't know, and reading that stuff seems really intriguing to me. I don't know if there's any English translations of it though, or if you've got to be like steeped in the religion and like practitioner.
It'd be a whole field of study. And it's one thing to study it, nothing to practice. That's another thing. Like I feel like some of those, like there's so many steps in the temple, it might be like trying to force an operating system, which is why I don't like the Golden Dawn magic, because it's like, you're in this sephiric realm when you see this color and this color highlighting it and backwards, and then when you ask this angel, you say this password, and like you can do that. And if there's the theory where it's like you're retreading someone else's path, there's a current there, so it's easier to tap into that energy the more people have done it. It's like the thought form deal.
Oh, okay.
The reason Christianity is so powerful is that there's a bunch of Christians. So theoretically, that egregore or that
it's
God
a highway.
has the most power because it's got the most energy coming from the people. So it's easier to plug into, theoretically. But like if I went to that Tibetan temple and they're like, oh, you had 10 steps but not 9, so you were in the wrong temple. Like that, you weren't there, obviously.
Oh, I heard that.
It's like, was I just there and I experienced 10 steps because it's me?
Right. It's like, what if your gate is like shorter or larger, and be like, maybe it took less steps to get there because I stepped further.
Something like that. Like, I mean, get nitpicky. I mean, there's Jewish traditions where they count the number of beard hairs in God's beard and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, if you want to go into this stuff for that kind of stuff, like go for it. It's fun to study, but I'm more interested in the practice because one, it's more interesting that way when you start interacting. So I've done the most vivid experiences I had was with shamanic journeying. And here's the process. It's simple. Like anyone can do it. I mean, probably anybody, if you have an imagination, is I sit down like I'm in meditation, and I probably meditated beforehand to clear my mind, And then I put on a drum track, a shamanic drum track, because I read from Sandra Ingerman, who's the book I read, The Shamanic Journey or Beginner's Guide. And what they suggest is you imagine you're at you're someplace, your favorite place, your happy place in nature. So you'd be hearing the drum, and this helps induce a hypnotic state of mind.
Like a rhythm.
It's a rhythm. So you can do this by staring into fire, a drum track. I mean, you can dance yourself into an ecstatic trance and achieve it. But then eventually I don't know about ecstatic trances, but in this listening to the drums, you imagine you're in your favorite place in nature, and generally they say go to the underworld first, because there's the underworld, the middle world where we exist, and like the fairies and stuff, and then there's the upper world with the angels and teachers, or blah 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 blah. A very useful, easy
diagram.
A metaphysical diagram of the world. So you go to the underworld, which is the primordial world, where you find your power animal or whatever. So you're at your favorite place in nature, and what you do is you find a hole in the ground as the drums are going off, and you imagine yourself climbing down the roots of this tree, and you keep imagining yourself climbing down and down and down till you feel it. You'll feel it in your body somehow, or in your mind, in your imagination, that you hit the barrier, and you actually feel like you're moving into the underworld or the lower world. And then you just let your imagination go, or you imagine it, and you're like, all right, what do I see? And sometimes it's not visual for me. Usually it's not. Usually it's an impression, like a painting. It's not photorealistic, or I get a feeling somewhere in my body, and I'm like, okay, where are we at here?
Oh man, dude, I can imagine this would be fucking amazing with intention and like salvia, or like intention and mushrooms.
Yeah, if you do this with mushrooms, instead of just imagining and intuiting the god or whatever, the demon, you see it.
Yeah, you'll like pull it into the physical world, dude. Like, but continue, go ahead.
Well, but that's pretty much it. And the crazy experience I had was I had my intention was to heal, because that's a very good intention for anyone doing this. Because sometimes you're like, I want my power animal. It's kind of materialistic, like it's mine, you're my precious, And but I had this intention to heal, and I journeyed every day for a few days. And on the third day or whatever, it was like, okay, there's my teacher spirit over here. He's like, all right, I'm laying on a stone altar, like, and in and out of my vision and feeling. Then there's a Archangel Sandalphon over here. I've been bathed by the sun spirit over here. And then my teacher's got this yellow crystal, and he's yelling, heal. A bolt of lightning comes down, hits the crystal, and he puts it into my third chakra. It's like you just made it up. It's like, really? Like, maybe, but I didn't try to.
Right.
I just like opened my up. I went down the pathway, and then I let my imagination be pulled by the drums or whatever. And this stuff's not easy. It's like, the thing is, because I did it a few days in a row, it's like it's a skill of imagination. But man, like, first time I did 3 journeys, because I was messed up and I was trying so hard, and I was crying because I was so frustrated. It's like, why can't I do this? And I had a spirit show up and was like, is this really how a king is going to act?
Oh damn, getting called out, dude.
Like, is this really gonna? You're not acting like a king right now. Like, okay, it's like, fine, I'll take you to your special place or whatever. It's really bizarre, and you can only. I'd say give it a try. You might not make it on your first try, but if you do it every day, and that's literally it. Listening to these drums, you can search shamanic drums on YouTube. Get some headphones in a quiet place. You can put on a blindfold, or you want to do it in the dark, 'cause more melatonin and visual stuff. If you want to be a freak, I don't know if I can recommend this, but at your own risk, you can use some entheogens.
And what's an entheogen?
Drugs.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. Mushrooms, whatever your favorite hallucinogen is. But I'm not responsible for whatever you do, because this is like reprogramming your subconscious mind. It can lead to a traumatic experience if you're not careful.
And just mushrooms in general, like, you'll experience what a lot of people call like ego death, and you might like go through, like, if you're unfamiliar with mushrooms or hallucinogens, or what are they called, psychotropics, I don't know, there's a bunch of words for them now. Like, the science is in, they're using them for rehabilitation. It's the easiest way that psychologists and scientists in the Western world have been able to help people overcome PTSD, help people overcome heroin addiction, cigarette addiction, and help people like overcome past traumas so that they can be better than themselves. Um, and it's less toxic than alcohol. You know, there was a lot of propaganda that like people were going insane and dying or whatever, overdose. I don't think you can overdose on mushrooms. From what I understand, all of the deaths recorded from mushroom overdose, air quotes, have been a combination of alcohol, marijuana, and mushrooms. And like what happened is people jumped out of a fucking
Yeah, you
building.
lose your inhibition and
Yeah.
you're on a trip.
Yeah, and then you like get hit by a truck or you jump out of a fucking building because you think you can fly. Those kinds of things. Um, there's a couple of really good podcasts with Paul Stamets.
Yeah. Mushroom Man.
Exactly. He'll give you better information. Look up with him. He's got two good ones with JRE. But the other thing, the science, they did MRI scans with mushrooms in people's brains and LSD and ayahuasca, and it's before this study that was in the, what are they called, the Oddies?
The oddies.
The Oddies, yeah. So
or the aughts. I think they call them the aughts.
the aughts,
now.
okay. So 2000s, right? The aughts.
Yeah.
People had thought that you went into like a dream state, like it induced a dream state, and then you were like lucid dreaming or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But what they found is that your brain, yeah, because they thought that your brain shut down and that you were in a dream state, but the opposite is true. Your brain goes into hyperactive mode, and then parts of your brain start communicating with other parts of your brain that they haven't interacted with. Imagine putting a bunch of highways in your brain rather than taking like the same neurological pathways. So like instead of driving down Main and taking a ride on First and then getting to whatever thought process that you're going, you're like, you go straight from A to B in a super highway, and that's what creates the synesthesia. So you have parts of your brain, that's how you can taste smells and hear colors and stuff like that, is that you have
Purple tastes great. I love the purple taste.
exactly. So I would definitely, consenting adults do what they want to do, but I could imagine just like hearing this description of what AJ is talking about. It's like, oh man, like with intention, because that's another thing when you really look into these things, the stoned ape theory or like shamanism and stuff. Like these people, they didn't use it as recreational drugs. You don't take these drugs and then like, oh, I'm tripping balls, man.
They were hungry.
Yeah, and then they found the way, or they went on their spirit journey. They went on their coming of age story, right? Or they needed instruction or something like that. They wanted divine instruction.
Yeah, I think it speaks to like back then, if the stoned ape theory is one of the proper theories, like the sole intention that the human animal is to survive.
Mm-hmm.
So having that base intention, even if it's just subconscious, these mushrooms helped us survive better through some kind of inspiration and thrive, and made people horny or whatever to have more sex, more babies, stuff like that. I think it also like speaks to like just the basic will to power, and I guess probably what we're going through, that's more shades of essence, we're more nuanced now, but it's really cool.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, and about the using this stuff for therapy, it's not just for funsies. Even as far as like just like basic Western ceremonial magic is concerned, Israel Regardie recommended that before people start getting heavy into magic, to do like talk therapy for an entire year. Because when you're doing this kind of magic, because you want stuff to happen. Most people do magic is either for like a spiritual purpose, to ascend consciously, or to make stuff manifest.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's not Harry Potter. It's not kind of come out of thin air. I mean, it might, but it's probably the ultra rarest thing, and you got to reach some crazy zero mind state. But you're going to come up against every emotional limitation possible, because if like, I want to make money happen, but you don't have the self-esteem or the right attitudes about money, like those demons are going to pop up because you haven't dealt with them yet. You haven't integrated them yet. So if you're in a bad state of mental health or any of that, not to mention all the mental illnesses like schizophrenia that I really don't know about, but like it's a lot of people call this shadow work. You gotta resolve and integrate the bad feelings, which is why when a lot of people take mushroom trip, it's usually you have a period where you're like crying your eyes out or stuff like that. It's not all fun because this is work. Like this is not something to. I mean, you can do it for fun.
But you're still gonna get that bad trip because I mean, if you're tripping for like 6 to 8 hours, unless like your life is honky dory, like things are gonna come up, and you know you don't know how you're gonna deal with that.
Yeah, if you're going through your day normally and you have thoughts like I hate myself, like no one likes me, you don't think that's gonna pop up during your trip when it happens naturally.
For sure, dude.
Times like 100 or whatever.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's helpful. Like you can deal with this stuff, but you got to be willing to face it and work with it, you know. But once again, it's all at your own risk. Be careful. If you have questions about it, leave a comment below. I'll be happy to talk to you about it.
Heck yeah. Find a sitter. Find someone you trust in. It's going to have your back, man.
Yeah. That's one of the old reasons for having the shaman around is so they can guide you on your spirit quest.
Yeah, until you're experienced. And then perhaps you may, you know, attempt something by yourself. But don't be all crazy. You know, like... all in moderation. Yeah.
I'm being very careful
and
with
responsibly
the entities I work with because, I mean, it's just like, well, the way I'm working on is like with people. Like, not all the spirits are going to have your best interests at heart. They got their own priorities. A lot of them just want to be manifested in the world, and they do that through you. But, like, you want to make sure you're getting into a good relationship. So don't jump into making pacts with demons.
Yeah.
If you haven't met them and shaken their hand and said, well, what do you want? Can you help me out?
Right.
You know, don't be doing stupid stuff. Don't get desperate.
Right.
Because there's plenty of demons out there that would love to help a desperate person.
Yeah, dude. Make a deal with the devil. You know, that stuff always kind of got me when I was younger, like seeing some interviews, and then now we're going into the conspiracy realm, you know. It's like I remember watching conspiracy videos in early YouTube, like 2008, 2009, of like, was it Beyonce and Johnny Depp, like talking about their success and being like, oh, I don't watch my movies. I can't because it's not me. Like, he's up there, and like coming up with alternate personas for them to like embody when they're performing and stuff.
Well, look what it did to Heath Ledger, bro.
Yeah.
Like, that's another thing. Like, you don't think about these spirits as like something other. If you've ever been possessed by the spirit of jealousy, or the spirit of anger or rage or wrath, like these spirits are already everywhere behind everything. They're not separate. They're in the mesh with us. So like when you if you're a fiction writer and you're creating a character, you're creating a little spirit or an avenue for a spirit to manifest in the story. Like it's all there. So Heath Ledger became the Joker. He was he did his ritual, which is lock himself in the room, think his thoughts, and he created a home in his body for that specific spirit. I mean, it was brilliant what came out of it, the art, but like
ultimately it destroyed him.
Yeah, you gotta be careful. Like I guess he wasn't. Well, I don't remember if it was drugs or he wasn't able to sleep and died.
Yeah, and so he was overdosing. He ended up overdosing on drugs. I forget if it was sleeping pills or like antidepressants or something like that, anti-anxiety medication.
There's nothing shamans did is that like if you're going out to war, there's a ceremony to where when you left the village to go to war, you weren't the same person anymore. You crossed the threshold, you were a warrior. And then when you come back, there's a return ritual to reintegrate you into society. It's not like now where you come back a veteran and end up homeless. It's like because you can't process what you did when you were a warrior.
Right.
It's like you weren't the same person. You leave that person behind. You might keep them in a box just in case you need them again, but you can't be that same person in civilian life.
Yeah, and what is it? Jordan Peterson talks about this. Jocko Willink talks about this, like warriors, like going out and going into that mindset. And like some of those people, if they manage it well, they become like really grounded people because they know what they're capable of. And so like their insecurity is just so low, right? Because they're like, oh, well, you know, I don't need to prove anything to anybody. Like I'm deadly as fuck or whatever. Oh man, but I had something. What were we just talking about just before that?
I mean, we're talking about spirits and shamanism,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of magic, mental health, mushrooms.
Yeah, it'll come back around, I guess.
Yeah, man.
Something.
Well, yeah, it's been magic and stuff's fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely interesting. Humans are interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, we've come a long way, and we might have come a long way twice.
Or many times.
Yeah.
Yeah, some people think there's all kinds of theories. Like, they keep finding artifacts that are way too old.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I hear about it. I haven't done any research on it because I really don't care if the hammer was 40 billion years old.
Right.
I mean, it's cool. It's not like the mainstream media is going to, like, acknowledge it or how old the Sphinx is. Like, really, like...
Yeah, or how, like, also the established theory. It's hard to break an established theory without, like, overwhelming amounts of evidence. Because people don't want to be wrong.
Well, also people are so psychically fragile,
Mm-hmm.
just because that's how... I mean, we're still evolving, and that's, like, the main thing, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Since we've gotten the physical part down pretty good, it's like now we got to get to the mental and emotional, evolution.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, part of evolution is that the weak die and the strong survive.
Survive, yeah.
Or thrive, I should say.
I mean, we're not having that struggle now, though, or at least not in the first world.
What do you mean?
Like, I think we talked about this in one of our last podcasts with, like, old dogs not dying.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's no natural predators. So it's like the same thing, like we have stupid people reproducing all over the world in the first world with, like, little to no.
Well, the reason they reproduce so much is the chance
Nothing
of
stopping them.
Well, there's that, but there's also the greater chance of having, like, one of your children, like, roll up, like, because of odds and mutation or whatever. It's like, oh, this one's the smart one that gets to carry on the genetics as opposed to, something else. Of course, you could have a whole litter of dumb kids or whatever.
Dumb kids.
But then someone else, like, I know it's not fun to think about, but it's just how it is.
Yeah.
That's how the process works.
Yeah, nature. We're all born poor and dumb. Like, poverty is the rule.
The norm, yeah.
Yeah, I think we said this a couple times. Poverty, scarcity is the rule, and then, like, exceptionality is the exception. Excellence is the exception. And you're not going to be there unless you work hard or get lucky or both. I read a cool article where it was talking about how people, for a long time, people thought success was good decision making. They compared it to, like, chess. That's why chess is, like, a good skill to learn while you're young, right? It's because you could make calculated decisions to produce, like, a calculated outcome.
Yeah, you work within a limited framework of game rules to make the best decisions.
And so what they found was that poker is more realistic or more in line with reality is in life, because, like, you got to make the decisions, but there's a lot of luck. Like, you might not get dealt the right hand, you might get dealt the best hand, but then how do you?
And you got to manage risk too.
Yeah, and you got to manage the risk.
And bad information.
Do the odds. Yeah.
Well, I always preferred, like, the metaphor, like, we're not all created equal, but everyone gets a hand to play at life. It's up for you to play your hand the best you can with what you got. And you can always,
you can bluff it to the top, dude. Like,
you can sure as hell bluff it to the top, and then you can also, like, trade in your cards over time if you play them right. Like, I can get rid of these cards, I can draw two more, I can get a better hand. And stuff like that. I mean, it's not a perfect analogy. In fact, it's probably more fluid than that. But it's a good one.
Yeah, and much more, like, just being open to opportunity too. I remember just looking back, like, there was a lot of opportunity.
Oh yeah.
It's like, and if you don't take it up, well, there's more doors. There's always more doors. Unless you're, like, locking all the doors and burning all the bridges.
You choose not to. You flip the board, or you build up the belief system that you can't do anything. You enter an apathetic state, and what's limited is your own perception. Like, that's one thing I want. If I could do anything with this podcast, is to let people know they have options.
Yeah.
Podcast.
Yeah, dude. And it took me a long time to realize. I would recommend reading Meditations early.
Yeah.
I read that book when I was 26, and a lot of it was just similar to 12 Rules for Life. It's like things you knew, but you didn't have them in words. You didn't have it organized. And like, I think we've said this before too, the greatest thing about, or one of the best things about living now is that there's just so much knowledge. There's so much like real good knowledge by brilliant thinkers that needs to be like kept and passed on. And like all this fucking weird shit about like, oh, well, Marcus Aurelius owned slaves, so he was morally bad, so all of his writings are wrong. Like, shut the fuck up, dude. Like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
That's bad. That's throwing the baby out the bathwater.
Yeah, man. Like, we wouldn't have any of this if it wasn't for, all the suffering that led up to now. All the suffering, and the current suffering too, because like that's how we see the current suffering, and like we need to, or collectively or individually, will move past this.
Yeah.
And hopefully in a good direction rather than like total global destruction.
I think no matter what, it's some positive. So, of course, people be like, well, what about this? It looks bad in the micro. Like, it's like the market. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down, but the general trend is up.
Always.
So it might just be hitting a low spot. And that low spot might be 100 years, it might be a millennia. Doesn't matter. Play the cards you got.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. And another thing I wanted to say is that if you can read, if you're literate, and you have access to the internet, there's not too many excuses for you. I understand extenuating life circumstances. You got to take care of family or something, which you don't have to do. I mean, to be completely morbid, I don't believe in obligations, only consequences. But if you can read, if you have access to the internet, and maybe someone to help mentor you a little bit, the only thing left to get over is yourself. Deal with your own emotional setbacks, hang-ups, and stuff. Because you have anything you want to do, learn how to start a podcast, Google.
Yeah.
If you can read, internet access, you know how to use a search engine.
Done.
You have access to anything. You don't need to go to fancy school. You don't need to pay a lot of money. You might have to spend a lot of time searching through bad information. But like, start a podcast, how to start a podcast. You can comment below, and we'll help you out.
Hell yeah.
It's not that hard. I mean, last week's audio was just from my laptop, and it wasn't even that bad.
Yeah.
So you don't need the fancy mixers or microphones or any of that stuff.
Yeah, one step at a time. I mean, some of my favorite YouTubers, like
Long Beach Griffey.
Yeah, dude, cell phone. Like, everything's recorded on a fucking cell phone, and it's great. It's hilarious. It's wholesome content.
He dropped another rap video.
When he's sad or whatever.
Yeah, no, when his rappers are coming after they have their heart broken.
Yeah, dude,
it's not
great.
As good as the other two, unfortunately.
Yeah, for sure. It's less brutal, but it's still good.
Yeah. But yeah, it's another thing, like creative limitations, important. It helps make stuff more, not authentic, but more unique. Because, I mean, obviously you got your own body, so that's going to be limiting in its own sense. Your own mind, your perspective produces, like...
experience.
So never discount that, your own unique perspective, definitely. But if you're, especially in America now, like you got a unique perspective, you got something to offer, even though you might be hated by half of America.
Yeah, fuck them, dude. Like,
maybe you gotta weigh your pros and cons.
I guess, dude.
You don't want to risk everything now.
What I was saying about meditations, I wish I'd read earlier. Or also just dude, like,
Did I read Meditations or did I read the manual?
You read the manual.
The manual's really good.
Yeah, the manual's fantastic. That's slave knowledge, dude. Like, Epictetus was a slave, and he ended up creating a philosophy for kings.
Didn't his writings end up informing Marcus Aurelius?
Yes, and it definitely influenced his writings, and a great many of Greek and Roman, like upper class, that end up being Stoicism and real Stoicism. I think there's a modern version of Stoicism, which is like a descriptive term. It's like being emotionless and cold or something like that.
I believe it's called toxic masculinity.
Oh, no. I mean, maybe. Masculinity is great, by the way.
So is femininity.
Yeah, absolutely. And you need both.
Not to sound like a total beta male, so spinning in it.
Yeah. All
Gotta
fast.
be on there quick.
Oh god. Where's the camera? I'm glad the camera didn't catch that. Or maybe it'd be better. It'd be more comical. But
We'll get the cameras on eventually.
yeah, dude. Hell, go to the Patreon. Link in the description, dude.
Oh man.
So I was saying.
You were
yeah.
reading
Like not giving a fuck, bro. Like and understanding that people don't know shit, and like even more so now because knowledge has gotten so specific. There's like a bunch of barriers to like general knowledge. So a lot of people have really specific knowledge so that they can make more money in their field, you know, and we can have progression in science and stuff. But like people don't know stuff, and people don't know what's better for everyone else. Like if someone's telling you like they're going to solve all your problems, like they're probably going to manipulate the shit out of you.
Except us, we will solve all your
problems.
problems.
Exactly. Patreon in the description. But like that kind of thing, that's what's also great about the market. It's like the free market is what's it? Voluntary commerce, like voluntary exchange from individuals. And so like it's like a hive mind. It's like a learning AI. Like it figures itself out, you know. Mm-hmm. And I think Aaron, you said this. AJ, you
it doesn't matter. Same thing.
Yeah, dude. It like
people know what they want.
Yeah. And the only limitation is like the moral.
Oh yeah, earlier when we were talking, I said the limits of the free market as a good vehicle gets taken up by culture and morality, because like you said, if total free market, you don't want to be selling children sex slaves.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, it's free market. You know, it's my kid. I can do whatever I want.
Yeah, but that's morally improper, and that needs to be like the children need to be protected, right?
Yeah, I mean, I value the safety and welfare of children. Mm-hmm. So like that, I don't think that should be a thing.
Yeah,
but I also don't think you need a law to enforce that or a government if you have a cultured populace, because you got someone in trying to take or sell your kids, and
kill them.
Yeah, you can. Whatever punishment they deem, but yeah, he's probably gonna get hung up, or beaten, shot to death, and fed to the dogs.
Yeah.
So, and rightfully so by
by the community.
That community. Mm-hmm. But in that case, you gotta be careful. There's this old saying: "When in Rome, do as the Romans do." Mm-hmm. I mean,
in modern times, it's when in America, tell the Americans how to do it.
I guess. I mean, that's my right as an American.
Right.
Till the cabal takes it away from me.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, that happened last week. Oh no, that happened a few days ago, right? Current events.
Time magazine publishes some article thanking the cabal for preventing Donald Trump from getting reelected. Mm-hmm. I haven't read the article. I should. I want to.
I read the article. It's really like weighty. They try to, it's like good propaganda. It's like telling you, oh, it's okay because we did this. Because
it was our side.
Yeah, and we know what's best, obviously, and clearly, like, these people can't rule themselves, even though we want to live in a democracy, quote unquote, which democracy always fails every single time.
If the people
we've known this for thousands of years.
Are too dumb to rule themselves, they don't need to be participating in democracy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not exactly saying, like, let's go Leviathan, but, that'd be better than democracy.
I don't know where. I know Leviathan leans left, but that's it.
No, Leviathan is king. It's Hobbes.
Oh.
And so you have like the king on top ruling.
Yeah, I mean, a benevolent dictator would be way better than what we got now.
Right. I know some people advocated for like. I remember. Oh man, it was so funny because like Twitter arguments get really funny really fast. But it was like a group of people, and they were talking, and then some right-wing individual or like Roman conservative, let's say Roman conservative, he was like, well, it'd be good if we could just have like a dictator in there for 7 years. And like I knew the cultural relevance of that because that's what Rome would do. They'd have like their republic, and then like the senators would appoint like a dictator whenever shit was going down, like when they were at war with Carthage, yeah. And when they were at war, when Pompey and Caesar were going to war, like they appointed dictators for like 7 years or like a limited term, right, to like get the country around. So I got what he was saying, but like the other person, they were like, that would be so dumb. Like, why would you even suggest that? And then at the same time, they were like pushing, National Socialism, and I was like, that's just Hitler. Like, people like, you don't even know what the fuck you're arguing about. Like, y'all essentially agree.
Who's in power? Yeah. They're gonna set up their friends.
Yeah,
that's just how it works. If you like, communism will make the proletariat better. Well, guess what? The people who enact that are gonna set up their friends.
Yeah, and they're gonna rule.
And you're gonna be like,
crushingly.
"No, where's my piece?" And they'll be like, "Thank you for your help." And then they're gonna walk away from you, and then the person they appointed underneath them is gonna come back and be like, "All right, why haven't you broken these rocks yet?"
Right, dude. Boom. You're gonna turn these big rocks into little rocks.
Here's your potato soup, and glory to the empire.
Yeah, people don't get that, man. I think we touched up on this last time too. It's like, okay, let's say that you actually own the labor. Like, let's say in your dream world, the socialist utopia happens and you own the labor. And it's like, okay, so what's produced in the United States?
I don't fucking not cars anymore.
Yeah, not cars. So the cars don't belong to the people. Entertainment. The entertainment will be the only thing that belongs to us. Because, like,
no, my podcast belongs to me.
For me, exactly. Right. They don't believe in private property, man. Like, but what I was getting to more so is like, okay, so we make the computer chips in some places in the United States, but we don't make the LED screens. We don't make the keyboards. Mm-hmm. We don't make, so like if the utopia actually happened and the people had control of the resources, like mm-hmm. what resources would we have? Blue jeans, wool, like Etsy shops, dude. Like, people don't get it. People think that they're gonna like live and they're gonna be able to get their fucking McDonald's. And
as
like,
soon as you make anything, it'd be owned by everybody else.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I made these blue jeans. Friends, like, give me those blue jeans.
Yeah, those blue jeans.
No, they don't belong. And then everyone's gonna tear up the blue jeans because everyone wants them. Yeah. There's too much demand and no way to manage it. And the supply.
If you look at communism, the only it's failed everywhere. Communism, socialism has failed anywhere, and the only regime that still exists that's really successful is China, and they've adopted.
Well, they're fascists.
Yeah, exactly. They've adopted the fascist rule. They've adopted capitalism with control of the industry by capital investors or whatever. Like, people
that's how I would rule as king. Is if I was given the power, I'd set up my friends and family. Okay, that's what kings do.
It's like, y'all run the companies, but when I tell you to do something, you do it. You know,
it'd be like, all right.
America in war times.
You don't need me to tell you how to do stuff.
Mm-hmm. But when I tell you to do something, you better fucking do it, or you're going against the party.
Because I mean, Chinese, but for me, it'd be like, no, I own you. You know, I'm being cool.
I mean, we did. I mean,
if I was king
at the beginning of the pandemic,
I own nobody.
If I was the king.
If I was king. Yes.
If we had the pandemic at the beginning of the pandemic, we instituted the Industrial War Act. What?
I don't know.
You know what I'm talking about? Where it's like Donald Trump was like, you're making
ventilators.
Y'all are making ventilators. Like, that's essentially what fascism is. Like, traditional fascism, Mussolini's fascism was the combination of industry and state, which is what we're moving towards now in Biden's America, where like the government, the big corporations are moving in lockstep.
For like big tech
with the ruling class. Except
what do they call them? Like, you're lockstep with your nation, and you're also lockstep with another nation. Mm-hmm. Or are we just all CCP now?
Yeah. Well, we're moving towards globalization.
I can't become Chinese communist. I look terrible in red. Oh, I really do.
I look good in red.
Well, I'm white as hell, man.
Yeah, dude.
The wrong kind of white.
It's all right, dude.
I'm one of the blues and purples kind of white. You know.
You ain't got the olive skin, bro.
I might be able to pull off like the light pink shirt, maybe. I haven't tried it. I'm a little scared, but
purple looks good though. Purple's fucking regal, dude.
A good shade of purple, yeah. Dark shade, yeah, man. Good stuff. But yeah, aside from not having any freedom, dressing in red, not for me.
Oh man.
But I don't think they dress in red. They dress like in all the browns and like absolute devoid of individuality. Mm-hmm. You know. Or at least state-sponsored individuality.
Well, I'm down for the Texas secession. You know, I'm down. I'm not saying it's the best move, but like,
you want to see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, why not? I mean, we'd be a large economy. We'd be one of the biggest oil producers in the world. We'd be one of the largest countries in the world. We're larger than most European countries. Period.
Yeah.
We'd be economic allies with the United States. You know.
Hopefully,
yeah. And then like people like even when you go abroad, you know, I've heard stories about this like a lot. Like when you're like in Japan or you're in Europe, like you don't say you're American, you're like I'm from Texas, and people are like, oh yeah, Texas, and they like finger guns and talk about cowboy hats.
They think
and
it's
shit.
cowboys, but
Yeah.
really it's Mexico.
Yeah.
Yeah, a Philly girl, she came down. I used to work with her. She's like, she thought it was cowboys, and it's like, no, it's Mexico.
Yeah.
You know, it's nice though. I like it down here, man.
Yeah, man, it'd be great. And then like somebody was telling me, I was talking to somebody, and they were like, "Oh, dude, if Texas seceded, we'd never legalize marijuana." And I was like, "Wrong. I think it'd be easier because then there'd be 5 states within state Texas, so we could just like states' rights that shit.
Go to the county level.
Yeah, bro. Be like, I'd be so much more inclined to be like politically active.
Well, yeah, it'd be
like
much more easy.
Yeah, my congressman was like downtown instead of like.
But if you think that the problems of democracy won't follow us to a state government, that's be sadly mistaken.
No, we'd be in a republic. We wouldn't be in a democratic republic. So we'd have to deal with the bourgeoisie.
The left always does is it enfranchises to increase its power.
Okay.
So whoever has been underrepresented.
Hey man, I'd rather stall it like a few hundred years than like deal with what we're dealing with now. And $19 trillion gone immediately. Our budget's balanced. Texas isn't in debt.
What if to allow us to secede, they're like, all right, but you got to take this much debt with you.
We'd probably pay it off, dude. We're like the 9th wealthiest country in the world.
Yeah, so I'm just curious about what would Texas lose leaving the United States? What would we lose? But then you have to weigh that against what the United States would lose, and if they'd be willing to let it happen.
Yeah, and it'd be like a 5 or 10 year transition. And I mean, I think they would. They'd have to let it if we legally. So the initiative is to use the Texas Constitution in order to. What's going on?
No, I was worried about this peaking over here.
Oh, okay. I might be getting too excited.
No, that's cool, man. I mean, if you get too excited, you can always just lean back a little bit.
All right, there we go.
But I wouldn't sweat it too much, man. It's good.
So we'd use the Texas Constitution to secede, right? And so it'd be more of like it wouldn't be a secession. It'd be like a withdrawal from the Union, right? Mm-hmm. And then I don't think the big fear would be that like the United States would go to war with us or like want to take us back, but they would be pressured by the United Nations, like the globalist perspective, to let it happen, or else that they would be deemed hypocrites. It's kind of like when Russia was like taking.
Since when does the powers that be care about hypocrisy?
Bro, like the world stage is different, especially since we're moving towards globalism, right? So like if you're talking about you're talking about like Euro, like nobody wants whatever they like. Everyone's upset that Great Britain is, or I don't know, England, right? It's not Great Britain anymore. It's not Britain. It's England.
I don't know what's going on over there.
Yeah, but like if
I'm American,
like when Russia attacked Crimea, everyone was fucking pissed off about it, and there was like sanctions and threats of war and stuff.
Yeah, but
you don't think the same thing would happen from like
the United States military,
the most powerful entity on the planet.
Are they really gonna roll those dice?
I guess, man. I don't know. It'd also be a new framework to international relations. I don't know. There's pros and cons, right?
I think for a secession to go smoothly, or some kind of division,
dude, I think people would leave with us, dude.
I think it'd have to be. Well, yeah,
if Texas like took the step, people would be like, "Oh yeah, fuck yeah!" Like,
and it'd have to be like beneficial for everybody. Like it'd have to be win-win across the board.
Oh, you just got to sell it. You got to be like, look, we're not interested.
It might be that the Texas Confederacy or whatever.
No, it'd be the American Republic.
A lot of debt.
Or the Republic of Texas.
We have to assume a lot of debt and be like, now you get all this money to fuel your communist programs or whatever.
Yeah.
Like it'd have to be very persuasive and of benefit. There'd probably be some kind of trade favor that is better than. I mean, it'd probably be some kind of dirt. Like we'd probably hate it.
Oh, I mean, I'm not entirely sure we would, because I think it'd be like we'd probably have some sort of what's it called, obligation to like sell them oil
Yeah,
or something like
right.
that. But we already do that. We produce 25% of the nation's oil.
Oh, then
So
they can say that they're no longer on fossil fuels. They don't drill anymore.
yeah, exactly, dude. So like
But
it's all about like a perspective thing. And I mean, Texans,
but
like the
Tex
reason I love Texas is because like there's actual like pride, and like people love America, and they
yeah,
love their rights, and they love like their guns, and they want to be left alone here, you know, in a majority of the state, you know,
yeah,
it's parts of the state. I almost say country. Uh, yeah.
yeah.
It's part of the country that you know, what was I saying? Oh, that don't have that pride. But like if America loved being America, if Americans love being Americans, like Texans love being Texans, you know, we wouldn't be in this like weird predicament that we're in now.
Oh, definitely not.
You know, I'm not like, I'm not saying that I'm like totally nationalist, but like I would rather side with nationalists than communists.
Patriots
Yeah.
are better than nationalists, man.
Yeah, patriots a much more beautiful, elegant word.
Nationalism is associated with tribalism, and it's very defensive, which invites like violence. Patriots is love, like love of country.
Yeah.
Patriot will defend their country, might go to war for something real heavy, but like nationalism is just like take up arms. We gotta defend the nation.
Right.
We gotta defend it. And Patriots like no. I just love my country. You know, I will defend my country, but it's gonna be out of love as opposed to some sense of pride.
Okay.
Which is unstable because you know it's based off defensiveness.
Yeah,
and others.
I think also nationalism might also be associated with like the whole world needs to be my country.
Maybe, yeah,
right?
Something like that.
Like nationalism in
We got to grow the nation. You know, it's not enough to be like I love where I'm at.
Right.
It's like
whereas like patriotism is like when I think of America, I want everybody to have like American values. Like
yeah.
I would love, like I would really love for like anybody to come to this country and be like, man, I love America. This is great. I can practice my religion. I can practice whatever. But like that integration is key, because like coming here and like trying to get away from that culture, it's like I think damaging to society. I think we've got a really good thing going on. That's what I'm trying to say.
Oh yeah, no, I love being in Texas for sure. Secession would be interesting, but I don't think that.
It'd be awesome if it worked.
That would be awesome, but the thing is, like, and
we got a border wall too.
What am I? I don't know the word, but I'd be afraid that the only reason Texas would succeed would be at the benefit of some faction of the elite. Otherwise, why would they don't? The elites are in control. Like someone would have to like one of the elites would have to benefit greatly for them to be motivated enough.
Well, I think several elites would benefit greatly, you know.
But it's probably going to be at the expense of
others,
the peasants.
I don't know, man. Like when you look at the power struggle that we're moving in towards now, it's like there's more multimillionaires, there are more influential elites now than there have been at any other time in human history, and there's fewer and fewer positions of power as that number grows. So not creating another ecosystem could potentially lead to more internal conflict.
I definitely, I think I agree with that.
Because it's economics. It becomes scarcity.
Yeah, well, the fracturing is already happening. So if we were to let the divorce happen, there would be less.
There'd be an ease, because then now there's like new positions of power.
Yeah. And the system would readjust to the two powers,
and then the people could go to like where they want. I think my biggest fear, or not even fear, just like my expectation, is that if we announced that we were going to secede, and that we were legally allowed to disjoin from the union, there'd be an even bigger migration,
influx, immigration.
Yeah, I think it would just like people would just come in, bro. They'd want to get off that ship, and not that America's sinking, but like
I'd be for it.
There's a lot of erosion.
As long as they would get rid of the homeless camps.
Oh yeah, for sure. And dude, like,
I saw him the other day, dude.
Oh, in fucking Austin, man.
Dude, the tarps and everything, jury rigged up.
Dude,
man.
I saw one. Dude, there's a couple of them that got chimneys in there and shit, and like made out of, like, I don't know what the fuck they're made, like trash cans, like.
You can make a chimney, but you can't get a job.
Yeah. Dude, I saw someone doing it, I guess, right? Quotation marks. They must have been like somebody that just moved into the area, but they parked their truck and their trailer, and they were there for like 2 months. And now they're gone. So I'm assuming they like moved into the city, didn't have a place to stay, knew that they could legally camp on the side of a highway, did that for a little while, and then bounced. You know, and they did it in like a region that has less homeless people. They probably only had like 1 or 2 neighbors. Yeah. Like versus like some of those underpasses are like packed.
Yeah, it's bad.
But I think it would also be easier for us to like get away from the tech oligarchy because we'd be able to do more regional control or like government inactions. Like I think Poland like $2 million a day or some $2 million every time they censor somebody's speech. So like Poland, I'm pretty sure it's Poland, but and Florida just is passing in the law too, where it's like $100,000 fine every day if they censor a Floridian.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so it's just like we could pass laws like that to protect ourselves from the government, or from the oligarchy, because then it'd be like, okay, you want to censor Texans? Well, that's going to be $2 million every time you censor a Texan, and like that'll add up exponentially if there's.
That's got to be enforced though some way. So unless they come into Texas jurisdiction, like.
Well, if they're running the app in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Then it'll just be the country of Texas enforcing them.
I know, but if they're like, they can send an invoice, but they can just be like, I'm not going to pay this because we're not in Texas jurisdiction. We're over here in California.
I guess. I mean, but then that'd be like international shit, right?
Yeah.
Or no, they would probably like take it out of their income, any income that they made from Texas. I imagine that the country would be able to enforce that law.
I mean, they'd find a way if Texans were smart about it and they're investing.
They just like
technology.
take it out of their tax or something.
Yeah, I mean, the best thing probably could happen would be like just to start a Texas like social media network.
That'd be dope. I'd be down. I'd be on it.
Yeah, and then just be like, I don't know, man. I mean, it'd be good for a while, but it'd only be a matter of time before the Texas elite would like start exerting control, because that's just what they do.
But who the fuck's that gonna be? Like Matthew McConaughey, bro? Like
maybe
Joe Rogan?
I don't know. Maybe he's the devil. I mean, I'd be down. Joe Rogan ruling Texas, bro.
Yeah, bro. Governor of whatever Austin.
President.
State Austin. I wonder where these states would be. I understand that there's like 2 draw-ups. There'd be either 5 states or 7 states. You know, I'd stay the fuck out of the Panhandle.
There'd probably be like, I imagine like a big border state.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, the Valley. There'd be like the Valley.
Probably Central Texas.
West Texas, they'd call it like Big Bend.
The carcinogenic coast.
Yeah. Dallas.
Or Houston. Yeah, there'd be the Dallas. There'd
Houston,
be Austin,
Central.
San Antonio.
Yeah.
Houston. There's probably something along the border.
And then the 2 states to the left would be like the biggest. It'd be like the Panhandle and West Texas.
Yeah, where there's like nobody.
Yeah.
So maybe.
Those would be like our Midwest.
Yeah, except nothing grows there.
Yeah. That's not true. Panhandle's, well, I guess the Panhandle's like a desert, farmland, weird
I don't know,
situation. Man. Don't go to Lubbock, dude. I feel bad. I mean, I love you guys out there in Lubbock, but there ain't shit to do in Lubbock and Amarillo.
We could solve that.
Yeah.
Well, all right, man. It's we're sitting at 1 hour and 4 right now.
Oh, hell yeah.
Ready to wrap up?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Well, thanks for listening and hanging out with us. We've been your hosts. I am Freighter AJ, Aaron James, Anarchist Occultist.
What's up, Lurker Mario?
Yeah, and we've been Drag the Waters Podcast.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, take care, like, subscribe, Patreon links below, all the other capitalist bullshit, voluntary, do what you want, we'll be happy to talk to you, whatever.
We'll see y'all next week.
Yeah, later.